Pat Bianchi is a Grammy-nominated jazz organist known for pushing the boundaries of the Hammond B-3 while honoring its rich tradition. Mentored by legends Dr. Lonnie Smith and Joey DeFrancesco, Bianchi has developed a unique voice that blends deep roots with a forward-thinking approach. As a leader, he's toured extensively across the U.S. and Europe, opened for Steely Dan, and performed alongside icons like Pat Martino and Lou Donaldson. His command of the instrument, harmonic depth, and rhythmic intensity place him among the top organists of his generation. In addition to his busy touring schedule, he teaches at Berklee College of Music and hosts a SiriusXM show Organized, celebrating the art and history of jazz organ. And we're live. Pat, good to see you.
Great to see you too, and thank you for inviting me to sit and chat with you today. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I've watched a lot of interviews online, and talking a lot about your work with Pat Martino and a bunch of other things. But I really want, there were some things that I think myself and the audience are curious about, you being the jazz organist you are. But, first and foremost, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's been a busy time between, I've been on the road a lot the past 3 months and, teaching, of course. And, like every other musician, just trying to do everything possible to keep everything going, and make it all go in the end. So, but I can't complain. I feel very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing and to be playing, especially as playing jazz organ, which is not really the most common thing.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking into, let's say someone is just kind of starting their career as a jazz organist, they look to you as someone for inspiration. Seeing all the things you've accomplished and the artists you've played with, are there still things that you want to pursue artistically, like certain goals that you have in mind? Like, oh, I would like to, I wish I could have done this by now, or hope to be doing certain things in the future?
Well, I think goals always change as time goes on. So, looking backwards, so to speak, I think for me, I mean, I can't believe some of the stuff I've been able to do. So that's, it's just, it amazes me, whether it be playing with Pat Martino or, spending time with Lou Donaldson's band, getting to work with Joe Locke or all these other different musicians, or Ralph Peterson, who I played in his band for a number of years. You mentioned Steely Dan, all these things. It's just pretty incredible, and for me, like I say, doing it as an organist, music, I really can't ask for more in that respect. In terms of goals, it's these days it's always been musical. The business being what it is, it's always has its ups and downs. It's always changing. But I made a decision that I wanted to spend a lot more time back, like when I was a student or, up and coming musician, however you want to describe it, because I've always going to be a student of the music, but, being completely excited about music and discovering new things, checking out new things, and the goals being oriented around things I want to be able to do on the instruments, and do them well, which is a never ending process. So these days, that's a lot of where things lie.
You mentioned Ralph Peterson, which this would be a great, thing to talk about. I actually, believe it or not, when I was at Berklee, there was like a drum professor night where Ralph Peterson and a couple of other drummers played. Mm-hmm. And this is probably like 2006 or 7, but mm-hmm. you were playing with him on that night. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Was that the night was Mark Whitfield playing guitar?
Mark Whitfield was playing guitar.
Mm-hmm. I remember that. Yeah.
Trumpeter Gordon Howe, I think, was playing, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong.
I'm not sure. Somebody may have sat in, but I remember that the core trio, Mark was on that particular gig. And, I was nervous as could be, I mean, it's just, because, you talk about both Ralph and Mark. Mark was a hero of mine back during the times of like when he was first coming on the scene, and, they had Columbia House, where you could order your free CDs. And I got the Marksman as one of the CDs, and it's always loved playing, and, fortunate to get to work with him. But that was a kind of a surreal moment for me, because I'm just like, wow, I'm up here with, in this whirlwind of sound going by, and I'm just like holding on for dear life. But I do remember that concert.
And you guys played a lot of the music from the Larry Young recordings. So how did that collaboration come to be with Ralph?
I'd done a tour with Ralph. Gosh, it had to be a couple of years prior to that. And it was with a guitar player, Greg Scaff. It was he had a project that he released, and we had gone to Europe together. And at the time I had spent some time in Denver, Colorado. So I was living out in Colorado. And so we did this tour in Italy with Ralph, myself, and Greg Scaff on guitar. And Ralph and I ended up staying in touch just over the years. And I had brought him out to Denver on a couple of occasions because as I would try to do that at one point where I'd bring different artists out to play with me out there. So Ralph came out, he did a clinic at University of Colorado Boulder, and we did a number of gigs. And that just sort of was the starting point of this band actually developing. We did some trio things over the years, and then eventually shifting towards the musical area. We played a lot of stuff from Unity, as well as some of Ralph's compositions that were in that style. And that band stayed together, I think, maybe until 2012, 2013, when I first joined, up until I first joined Pat Martino, because there was a lot of conflicts, obviously scheduling wise, with Ralph would have a gig, Pat would have a gig. And of course, at the time I had to go where it was more consistent from a financial aspect. It's just to pay bills at that point, and I wasn't able to keep them both together. And then we did some playing, and actually the day before the pandemic, it basically shut everything down. Was one of my last gigs before the pandemic, and it was a duo gig, me and him. So I'm grateful that we had that opportunity to kind of reconnect, and for all intents and purposes, Ralph was the drummer's drummer, musician's musician. I got my butt kicked. He's just like everything I play, he'd be right there times 10, and push me, above and beyond, what I thought I could do. It made me grow. So I'm grateful to have had that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I've been to so many concerts over the years, and even just seeing you play with Ralph, and this has got to be around 20 or something years ago. It was something that I still remember and was very, inspired by. And you said that when you were playing that night, you felt a little nervous, playing with Ralph and Mark. Nerves are one of the challenges that people face early on. When they're coming up, what challenges did you face specifically, and how did you overcome them to be the artist you are? Did anything come to mind?
Well, I think nerves is a big one because by nature, my personality is very introverted. I'm just generally, I've become better at it. I've had to, but over the years, I've been a very shy person, not always having a lot to say, kind of, not speak unless I'm spoken to, especially when I'm amongst older musicians and things like that. Elements of always second guessing myself, we're human beings too, and, I think that's just a natural thing. And I never really feel like, even to this day, I fully had gotten over that. I think it's just something I constantly work on as a person because, it's just part of my personality. Some people are super confident and they're like, go out there, do it. They don't care, and well, they don't, they're just confident and then they just go out and do the thing. And others, get nervous, others second guess themselves. And, everybody's different in that respect. For me, it's something that I'd like to say to this day, I have no problem saying it's something I work on constantly. And one of the ways I try to do that, especially, post-pandemic is, if I'm involved in a project, a gig, a tour, whatever, if you were to call me for something, say, well, we got these 3 dates, then we have a recording session, this and that. My job is before that time to ask you for all the music and do my best to learn it inside and out. So I'm not dealing with yet another thing to put on top of, like, I'm gonna have to read through all this and figure this out and this and that. It's like I can go in there and really spend time with the music, especially as an organist, which I'm doing double duty, playing bass, accompanying different, you comp different for everybody. You don't play the same stuff, then you're soloing. I recently I was in a project a couple weeks ago at a gig at the Nash in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's myself, Lewis Nash on drums, Clark Gibson, who's a saxophone player, lives out there, Ashlyn Parker, who's an incredible trumpet player from New Orleans, and a longtime friend of mine, Dan Wilson, on guitar. And they're all heavy hitters. And they're all great people, but you want to go in there and deliver, and for me, especially having the responsibilities I do with the instrument, I specifically asked for all the music ahead of time and just to shed it. So at least I know going up there, I took the time with the stuff and I can take one thing off my plate, so to speak, and be able to focus on other things and be a little bit less nervous, more confident because I put the time in beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't account for. You know, playing the organ is, you know, you're like you said, it's you're doing two things at one time, and you would want to have the music prior just to be prepared as possible. Have you encountered certain situations, you know, where people just put music in front of you on the spot and you're like, oh, like, you know,
Oh yeah,
this,
of course,
yeah,
of course. I mean, that's always part of it, you know. But if I have the opportunity to have the prior situation where I can give everything be given to me, especially in a situation where it's a concert, so to speak, and I mean, because I do, there's a difference between, like, you've been around here forever. If we're playing, and one of the regular places where you go, you play your shift, so to speak, and everybody's is just hanging out, drinking, and not paying attention. Even though it's a killing band versus you're playing a club and everybody paid $30-$40, it's a different situation. So I don't
sure.
mind reading stuff and those things, but when you've got 150 people looking at you and a ton of heavies on the stage, it's like, accounting for the fact that, yeah, I'm playing both parts. Every drummer has a different feel, just like every bass player has a different feel. So trying to figure that out. Every horn player, guitar player, comp wants different things comping wise. So it's, I'm just breaking it all down, but it's just in the end, trying to be as prepared as possible for me really helps to alleviate feeling, it takes a little bit of the edge off, I guess you could say, in terms of being nervous.
Yeah, great stuff. I'm just gonna change my Wi-Fi really quickly. Give me just one quick second. This is Jazz.
Okay.
We I clicked the wrong Wi-Fi. Give me one sec. Okay, I think we should be back now, right?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
But you mentioned the nerves and everything, and you want to be prepared and play as well as possible. Before you play, do you still, you're able to take that pressure off yourself of wanting to, is it more enjoyment now, or it's still
Oh yeah. There's still elements of it. I think, is by nature of my personality, just like everybody has unique traits, there's always an element, will be there to some degree. But then, it's like once you get going and have to take care of business, so to speak, you don't think about that as much either. It's
Yeah.
kind of going through.
Well, no, it sounds like you're enjoying it more now than ever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Without a doubt. Yeah.
So, and you also talked about music being, that's your primary motivator. You just want to always be growing, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Checking out new stuff. What's on the agenda for you this year of things that you're really looking forward to?
In terms of music related things
Yeah, music or any concerts or things you're looking forward to in particular.
Well, this summer I'm slowed my schedule down quite a bit because there's a guitarist, Dan Wilson, has put together a trio that he wants to start doing gigs with. It's kind of called the Industrial Strength Organ Trio, which features him, myself, and the great Jeff Tane Watts.
Whoa.
So, and we're looking at, doing, Dan has some tunes, I have a couple things, of course, have some of Jeff's compositions, and it's very challenging. Some of the music can be very challenging because, for example, I'm a huge fan of Kenny Kirkland, and that music is not, to me, the easiest thing to pull off on organ. For a couple of reasons, but taking the time to really dive in and figure out how I can make certain things work, these certain songs work on the organ. Because the upside of playing piano on certain things is having comping voicing. When you're left-handed to play chords, it makes your lines come across in a different way, and especially with modern harmony, it becomes slightly easier task. And then when you're doing that on organ, it's just like, playing it on guitar or playing it on a horn as a single note instrument. I feel like you have to have a different set of ears, if not bigger ears, because you can't always rely, or you have to, the chords aren't there for you all the time. So you have to be able to play your lines a certain way or figure out how to get through it. So I'm looking forward to doing that for sure.
Are there gigs with that band already scheduled?
Yes, right now we're doing a jazz festival in Buffalo, New York. Sometime at the end of August, we have the Cleveland Jazz Festival, I think it is, in September. And then there's a possibility we're going to be going to Europe, doing a tour of Spain in November.
I hope it comes to the tri-state area. I will be at that concert in like a heartbeat.
It should be fun if it does. I think once we can get it off the ground, I mean, because we've never played together as a trio before. I've been very it's been an honor to play with Jeff on a couple occasions, and Dan a bunch of times as well. But we've never done it, the three of us together. So hopefully, as soon as we get to do it once, and kind of get some buzz generated, we'll be able to book some other things around it. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you just, a quick question about Pat Martino, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, you played in his band for a long time. You toured the world. You played everything from clubs and festivals. Are there certain nights that, when you think about it, like that night was really special for, whatever reason? Anything come to mind, like whether it was the audience or where you were? Like, what comes to mind?
Yeah, three different occasions stick out to me. The first one being, and I think it's on YouTube. We played a concert in Poland. It was, we were basically opening the festival, if I remember correctly. But and I don't even remember the name, like Gdansk, Poland, maybe it was. And it just happened to be one of those nights that was just incredibly special. And the music was all together. The audience was really into it. And it just, everything fell into place.
The full concert's on YouTube, you're saying?
Yeah,
I think he's wearing a leather jacket maybe or something like that.
It might be. And I'm playing this kind of a funky looking B3. It's all black. It's like kind of broken up, and it's a big stage. We're spread around a little bit, but that might be the one. I'd have to look to double check, but but you can find it for sure. I think it's Gandsk, Poland, if I remember correctly. But it was just a one-off where we flew out there for the concert, and as soon as the concert was done, I had to fly back because I had to play with Tim Warfield, and so it was like nonstop for me doing that. But that night was just an incredible gig. It's pretty amazing.
Everything was. What are the other two? You said there were three that stick out.
Yeah, the next one that stuck out really for me is in the later years. We played Colorado. We played a place called Mount Vernon Country Club in Denver. And the altitude, Denver is, a mile above 5280 sea level. And this club was still another couple thousand feet above sea level. It was all up in the mountains a little ways. And of course, unfortunately, Pat was dealing with COPD. He was dealing with, breathing issues were always difficult for him. And the altitude just made it unbearable for him. I mean, where he would have to just sit there, be on oxygen. When he wasn't, so we were out, not even sure the gig was going to be able to happen. So we were just going to sit in. Pat said, we'll just go up there, do a set, be done. And I don't think he wanted to, he was not going to give up. I mean, he had a handkerchief cleaning his nose, and he was sneezing. He was trying to hold his breath, keep his breath together. He ended up doing a 2-hour straight concert. It was just off the hook. It was
no
like
intermission.
No intermission, and in playing like there was no tomorrow. And it's just like he was not going to let anything stop him. And it was just an inspiring moment. It was just like to see that the will, and I mean obviously the professionalism, all that stuff, but you could just see he was coming from a different place, and it was just like the music was off the hook. He was not going to be brought down by the situation. He was going to kind of rise above everything, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and it was incredible. It was truly incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. He's like a guru in a way.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, guitar. I mean, and he had some pretty different philosophies, and sometimes we can say some of it was kind of out, in certain respects.
Yeah, a little esoteric, let's just say.
Yeah, and it took me a minute before but now I can understand where he was coming from a lot better at this point. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I get it. So that was a second moment. And the third is an all-encompassing moment, because no matter how tired he was, how whatever his mood was, whatever the situation, at the end of all the concerts, he would always make time for people. There'd be a line of people to talk to him and sign records, this and that. He would make time for everybody and, engage with them and have meaningful conversations, and not just be like, oh, I'm done, I got to go home.
I wish I knew this about him, because I used to interact with him via email.
Yeah.
And but I never really, I was always I don't know, for whatever reason, I just had this, I don't know, starstruck.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can totally relate with certain musicians. There's kind of like the holy grail, so to speak, and it's like, we're here, and they're like up here, and it's there's that element. I mean, I can relate, but yeah, personality wise, the fact that he was just so giving to everybody, and that appreciated and made time for everybody was really special, because I've seen the other side where artists are like, nah, I'm done. Thanks for coming. That's it. I'll see you later. But he'd sit at the bar and talk with people, so that's really special, and the thing about him too that was special, it's ironic because of this gig I was talking about at the Nash last week. George Benson was there hanging out.
Oh, nice.
And both Pat and George, there was never it never felt like there was any competition, just love, music can be a competitive thing, and players, between players, between whatever. But those two, through the course of history, it always seems like they've, as great as both artists are, have had nothing but admiration for each other.
I think those guys were like that, even in the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah.
I believe they were probably like that too, because they used to all hang out. But this is like something like, I mean, maybe that camaraderie and not being competitive, it came more naturally in the past.
Yeah.
But now it's like almost like it's went the opposite way, and you have to overcome that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I've noticed that so much more as years have gone by. But I look back to these two who basically, I mean, there's been so many incredible musicians throughout history, of course. I mean, so many incredible guitar players, but these two together, to me, and my limited knowledge of jazz guitar, really changed a lot of things about the instrument.
Unquestionably.
And for them to be like, so, like I say, so they both each admire each other so much, and there's no other kind of weirdness or anything like that, and nothing but respect, and not afraid to show it. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that's like, what helps people overcome that competitive aspect, that it's just human nature to be that way. It's survival instinct, especially in a field as hard to be in as jazz. True. But just realizing everyone has something to offer. And, once you're a pro, you're a pro, but everyone has something different to say, and it's okay. Yeah. We can all do different things. That's the beauty of it.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, if it wasn't like that, what's the point of doing what we do? Because then everything would sound the same. Everybody would think the same. And there would be no creativity, it wouldn't be worth it at that point. So the diversity of it all was beautiful.
So you started on piano before going to organ, I presume.
No, I started on organ first. I'm one of the few. Yeah. So when I was, I come from a family of musicians. My father is a drummer. Both grandfathers were horn players. One of them happened to also play keyboards and piano. And they played what's called the dance band circuit, which was like back in the day, probably like the 60s, 70s, playing big band music in small group format. So, and my dad loved to record, he was also into recording and stuff. So he would record the bands that he would play with and bring the recordings home. And we'd sit on the couch. I'd be really young on a Sunday and listen to a bunch of the stuff. And I kind of took an interest in it, and specifically playing piano, keyboards of some sort. So for I think it was 6 or 7, for a Christmas present, one grandfather gave me an old Farfisa compact duo organ, which was like, it's nothing like a Hammond, but it's, it had bass, you can play left-hand bass on it, things like that. And the other grandfather had given me an amplifier to go with it. So I got that for a Christmas present. And once I had that, I would just be in the basement for hours learning these tunes, these different bands that my father and grandfathers played in would do. Basically like old standards, or, Glenn Miller, Duke Ellington, certain context, so to speak. And that was all playing left-hand bass, no piano, no pedals, nothing like that. So I did that, even gigged like that for years until I got into high school. And then I had the band director was a jazz piano player who started showing me how to play left-hand voicings and play, jazz, quote unquote, jazz piano.
Were people trying to push you to play piano? Because maybe
my parents wanted me, they tried to get me to do classical piano, and right. I did it, but I never really took to it. I mean, I love the music now. I mean, it's so much incredible stuff. But at the time, my heart wasn't in that. I didn't get into music to do that, or, it wasn't fun like this other stuff, and just sitting there and trying to figure out, triads and bass lines. And basically that was fun to me, and then hearing the audiences in the background and trying to play with the recordings, not trying to learn a Bach, invention. Now it's obviously very different, but yeah, for me then I just didn't take to it as well.
This has been such a great conversation. If it's okay, I just, would like to ask you one more question.
Of course.
Yeah. So the challenges musicians face, I mean, I don't have to get into all of that. And even like something like you said, you mentioned the pandemic a little bit, obviously a very challenging time. And schedules have ebbs and flows, and sometimes we're busier than other times. It's like being a salesman in a sense, because sometimes you have strong months and bad months.
Exactly.
How do you stay motivated just during difficult times? Like, what do you go back to? Anything you think about?
I mean, I'd be lying to say if there weren't times where it's just like I'm just tired, And if it's not happening, it's just like maybe I should teach more or do this or do that. But Pat Martino had always said, it's like, you know what, man, no matter what, it always works out. It always comes around. It always comes together. So you have to remember that. So therein lies the thing of getting back into music for the sake of music. Of course, working, if I could teach a little bit more to pay, take care of the mortgage, or if I have to do this, that's a given. But, it's like when things slow down, it's like, okay, it's a perfect opportunity to spend time with the music and to learn, like I have to learn all these charts for next week versus, man, I really want to transcribe this part of this Joe Henderson solo. So that keeps me motivated by going from what I have to do to things that I want to do.
Oh yeah, man.
Get to, so that it keeps me in it. And it's, and maybe it's an, I can't believe I'm saying this stuff now, like an age thing. It's just like, no, I'm still like 20 in my head sometimes instead of, almost like 40.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know how you feel about this, but sometimes I feel like a break is good for the creative process, just to let it all kind of percolate and settle for a minute. And then when you come back to it, you have more kind of to give.
I wouldn't, listen, everyone has to be honest with themselves about how often they want to perform and stuff. And, for me, I certainly have a sweet spot, which is, maybe, I wouldn't want to play like 5 nights a week. I mean, it's just because it's hard for me, maybe like I'm like a 2-night a week, 3 time, because it's hard for me being inspired, and it's just the way I am, the way I'm. That's okay. Like I just, and that's why I could take those other days to like find the joy again and find the inspiration,
Exactly, because we're human beings.
Yeah, we're human.
There's more to life. Yeah, music is a huge part of life. Don't get me wrong, because I don't want anybody to jump on that. But there's other things in life that are just as important that end up feeding the music and the creativity as well.
Yeah. No, Pat, this has been great. Thanks so much for doing it.
Thank you for taking the time, man. It's really great to talk to you again, and I hope we do get to play at some point.
Oh yeah, that will be rectified.
Cool, man. I'm around. Definitely.